Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Monday Special. And tonight we're discussing transitioning from being someone who's single into a marriage, either a husband or a wife, and some of the challenges that come with that. We have two couples with us on set tonight. I'll start with a couple. On my right, we have Pastor Faith Mugera and Patrick Mugera. Pastor Faith is a pastor, but both of them have also dealt with couples, married couples, and counseled them as well. So we'll be able to hear more about their experiences with that. They've been married 15 years as well. They'll tell us more about their own transition into married life. And then we have Anne and Daniel, who've only been married for 6 months, but kind of talking about their own challenges and trying to transition into their various roles of husband and wife. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Let me start with you, Anne. I know you've been married for a short while. It's only been a few months. What has it been like for you so far?
All right. Thank you, Janet. It has not been very easy, especially adjusting into being a wife. After the honeymoon, it only took like a week. Getting back to the house, you're expecting now the roles are yours. And so you're like, is this really what I wanted?
When you say the roles in the house,
yes.
What do you mean? The chores, like the cooking and the cleaning?
Yeah, the cooking especially, the cleaning, and also adjusting to my husband, a person you've not been living with. So it was not as easy, but I thank God so far. So far, so good. We'll come to that a bit later. What about for you, Daniel? Would you say it's been the same experience with that?
Thank you, Julia. Janet, I say for me, I think it has been a good journey, but we have been having challenges whereby we are trying to transit from to become a man in marriage and become whereby somebody you answerable to someone in your life, which now becomes a bit technical for me because I was not used to. But I thank God because I am still transiting to it and accepting it.
Accepting the role of husband.
Husband in the house.
Husband in the house.
Yeah.
All right. I think now we can turn to the two of you who've had a lot of experience talking to couples, etc. Is there an issue that you've noted with people transitioning, young couples? I think we intentionally brought a young couple because that's what inspired this discussion. Young couples transitioning into those roles. I'm now a wife, I'm now a husband. Have you seen that with a lot of couples?
I think that it always comes as a shocker to the system. That my days of dating when everything was rosy, he opened doors, he brought flowers, he remembered my birthday, he called me at 2, at 4, at 3:22, at 4:03, all that suddenly just seems to disappear. And so here we are adjusting to new roles. I have to adjust to being the wife that he thought I should be, and most times it's set against what his mother did for his father. Okay, and I had this rosy idea that this man will take care of me for the rest of my life. He would cook for me like the way I see things happen in the movies. He'd bring flowers every day. Perhaps he would be taking me out every Friday night like he used to do. And suddenly there's just a whole breakdown of communication. It's just not what I signed up for.
Okay.
And so it becomes a crisis because I have expectations and they're not being met. And he has expectations because he thought dinner would be at the table every day. His bed would be made every morning. He almost wanted to be showered. I mean, there's just all this breakdown and things are just, somehow the first few months just become a little rocky than you expect.
Yeah, and trying to settle into that. Was it the same for you, Patrick, in terms of what for you was, on a personal level, a tricky adjustment or one of the more difficult adjustments when trying to settle into your own marriage?
I think I didn't find it that difficult settling again. Probably what gets a bit difficult is, okay, Faith is a perfectionist. Very tidy, she wants everything put in place. I'm not a perfectionist. So trying to keep things tidy, trying to get to that level of her perfection, someone in my space all the time telling me this needs to be neat, this needs to be put, that could have been the difficult part of my adjustment. But a lot of it wasn't that difficult after some time. I guess you get to some point of adjustment. That could have been the initial thing of she's in my space and telling me this needs to be placed here and all that.
It's interesting that you've talked about expectations. What were your expectations going into this marriage? What were some of the things that you had visualized that haven't come to be so far?
I can't really say they haven't come to be. At least there's some improvement with time. But I really expected someone whom we can work together. I didn't expect a man that I get into the house or we get into the house and he sits and I go to do the work. So that was one of my biggest expectations. I also expected a man who will compliment me as I am. Yeah.
In what sense?
Complimenting me in terms of my strengths, my weaknesses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you could compliment each other.
Yeah.
Had you had this discussion before you got married in terms of how you want to ideally settle into married life, or did it just catch you off guard?
Okay, I think we didn't discuss more on marriage life, what the expectations, the real expectations, but we discussed in overview, what do you expect from me? At this particular time where we discuss overview, just somebody tells you very few points. I need maybe to be a responsible man, a loving man. But you see now in details, you get it in the family, where you get in the marriage.
Oh, right.
You find the real person whom you married, and the person whom you thought you might.
So it was very general, and then
Yeah.
you get into the marriage. Is that a mistake that you think people make? Should there be specific details of discussion in terms of, these are my expectations going into this marriage, so that people know early on? Is that something that you would advise maybe couples to?
I think it would be a great opportunity to have those conversations. But the truth about it is that it's theory.
Yeah.
It really is all, I will say the right things. I love you so much. I want to walk you down the aisle like tomorrow. So of course I'll say, I really do mean that I will make you breakfast every morning, and I will wash your clothes happily and iron your shirts, until you get into the house and I'm from work and tired. I've had a terrible day. I actually thought that you would be helping me, and you're not. And so all that romantic stuff, or the expectations that were theoretical, when the rubber meets the road and the realities are here with me, then I'm like, no, this was not part of the deal.
She's so agreeing. She's like, yes.
Yeah, and I can imagine, because it comes to the shock, and you're thinking, but when we were dating, you'd help me do this stuff, or you'd help me clear the table, you were happy to do dishes. But somehow news becomes more important than you being in the kitchen. And I think all of us as women ideally always want to know that our husband, this man who has pursued me so hard will be here when I'm cooking, will be here when I'm serving, will be here to wash dishes with me, will be washing clothes together. And then it doesn't happen? What happened to the man who I signed up and said I did to? Yeah.
Patrick, is that, again, common expectations from women? First question. The second one is, should people then have very realistic discussions, in as much as it's theory, on how they would want to live their lives as a couple? So one, do women have too many of these expectations, and should the discussions be more detailed?
Yeah, I believe the discussions should be more detailed. We should come together and discuss what we expect. But sometimes, from what I get, is women tend to find it harder to adjust than men, because I didn't find it that difficult to adjust. But maybe it's because we expect the women to do a lot of the things in the house once we get married. So for us, it's an easy adjustment. I'm expecting her to go and cook. I'm expecting her to wash the dishes. And then she's expecting me to do those things. And for me, probably in my home, that never really happened as I grew up. So I'm wondering why she's expecting that. So I think that's probably where the struggle comes in. And maybe those are some of the things we should have discussed before we got married. So that she tells me, I expect you to be in the kitchen as I cook.
Yeah.
So that when we get married, that would happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least you anticipated it.
Right. Instead of us fighting about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So people should have, again, just going back to that, detailed discussions. I feel like maybe that's where the gap is.
Yes, those are helpful, and it's a reason why we always ask couples, have you had premarital counseling?
Yeah.
Did you go through with an older couple or somebody the opportunity to explore marriage? It's a different journey. It sort of doesn't come with a manual, so there's all these opportunities for conversations. But then after you get into it, that's when you remember the vows that you made on that day. Because if it was for better and for worse, then even in this situation when I don't understand what happened to my romantic man, it has to be for better and for worse. That I have to remind myself consciously and make the choice that I made this vow, and I'm going to keep to it regardless of what I feel right now. I just think that's it.
Okay. Is any of this resonating with the two of you, what they're saying in terms of going back to the vows and remembering why you took this journey together?
Actually, yeah. Because whether you are upset or not, when you accept, no, it dawns on you, and you work you have a mind of service. I'm serving my husband, he's serving me. So you're not like you're being overused in that home. Again, when you're entering into marriage, it should be at whatever cost this marriage has to work. So it should not reach at any point that you feel that you're overwhelmed by anything. Just get back at your mind and remember that, as Faith has said, you remember the vows and that the marriage has to work whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I can concur with it, but the major challenge here is about the expectation. Because in a courtship and in a relationship, it's like of sugar-coated, where we are saying we are not talking the real thing. We are like acting here. But once you get into marriage, that is where now the real movie comes in. You find at that particular time, hey, even if I thought this was light, I think I'm not going there. This was not what I expected. Because I expected, being a wife, the way I saw my dad being treated by my mom. Or maybe if I have visited a friend and I have seen the wife treating the husband, am I expecting the same from my wife? Once I don't get that, now I start asking myself, did I make the right choice at this particular time? But now, at that point, now you go back to the vows that you took. You remember, I promised.
Yeah.
For better, for worse. So, better, now I come in and help her to serve me better so that we can be able to achieve our major objective.
Oh, so you've started to find a compromise.
Yeah.
Now, that's why you're saying it's become better.
Yeah.
How long should it take to find a balance, ideally? What's healthy? What's a good amount? When should it be a problem where you're thinking, no, by now you guys should have found an equilibrium and should have been able to find a balance? What's a good window?
I'm not sure that there is really a deadline type thing, eh?
Yeah. It's from couple to couple.
It is vary in that way, because there's some couples that are open, communicate well, have other people input into their situations. But it's a reason why, as we counsel with couples, we always say after a year you need to reevaluate your marriage, because if you put in habits at the beginning of your marriage that are unhealthy, then they'll carry through to the rest of your marriage, which is a very scary place. I mean, don't want to be in the situation of fighting about who is serving who all through your life.
Yeah.
And so we actually offer counseling classes after a year or after 2 years that say, can we evaluate what your year is like or your 2 years? What are some of the habits or some ways of resolving conflict, of communicating, of understanding each other? Because we have different love languages. Like the way I receive love, I want to be loved by gifts, okay? Patrick wants to be loved by being served, right?
Acts of service, yeah.
Yeah, and that it's too much work for me. like Andy is saying, I'm sure she struggled about, serving her husband, and he wants a meal put out there. That's how he wants to be loved. And so because he wants to be loved by acts of service, he serves me because he thinks that's how people express love. But I want to be loved by gifts. So we have such a huge communication breakdown, because I want the gift and he wants the service, and neither of us is getting, and we are giving what is not the other person's love language.
And it's possible to reach a compromise. I think a lot of people feel like, look, if I'm not getting this anymore, maybe I need out. It is possible to actually reach a middle ground, right?
Yes.
And kind of agree on how to express love to each other?
I think a lot of it has to do with communication, as she says.
Yeah.
We struggled in that area. I like acts of service. I would serve her. I would do stuff for her in the house. I would cook. I would clean up, because I thought that expresses love. For Faith, that does nothing for her. On the other side, she thought gifts. So she'd buy me expensive gifts.
Yeah.
And for me, that really did nothing for me. So there was that lack of communication. So I think you need to come to a compromise. So she began to tell me, this is how I feel loved.
Okay.
I need you to take me out for dinner. I need you to buy me expensive gifts.
Not expensive.
I knew she was going to put that and be like, not expensive.
That's how I want to be loved by a gift. And so I was going to actually ask them, how do you express love to one another? Or how do you know that you're you're doing well in loving one another? Have you found that middle ground yet?
Yeah.
I may say not really, because we have no, we are still running each other because one, maybe I may say I'm like Patrick, where I love the service. Being now, that's how we are seeing to feel be served.
Oh, he wants attention, eh?
Yes.
Just let the world stop and I'm here.
Because for me, what actually, my bigger question is actually that's why you find it, you have the difficulties once you get home on how to go to kitchen. Because for me, one, first of all, I need attention. We discuss. First of all, before going to kitchen, we sit and agree. First of all, we give attention to each other. Then now we go to kitchen and prepare for a supper or a breakfast. But for her, the attention isn't there.
Or she wants to get things done.
You want to get things done. Here now you need somebody to do the service. If you are there to wash her clothes, wash the house, clean the house, do all the house duties and everything, she'll be very happy. But now, for me, it's a contrary to that. Because
so that's where the disconnect is.
The disconnect.
So you like to be shown you're loved by acts of service, the attention. What about you?
Actually, he wants to be loved by quality time.
That's quality time. Is it? There's more than 2 or 3 languages. Quality time and acts of service.
Yes, an act of service and quality time are very different. He wants everything to stop. Let's just connect without having
before we
to
move
do
on.
Things. Yeah.
Interesting. And what about for you?
Mine is you're there for me.
Okay.
In everything, and give me my space. I think that
be there for me, but give me my space.
Yes, be there for me, as in I mean, you're not over controlling by giving me my space. You're not over what? Let me just use controlling. At least you allow me to do my own stuff. Now that communicates to me about love. Then being there for me is when I need you, or if I need something done, at least you'll give a hand.
Act of service, which is her love language. I'm trying to decipher it.
I think it's act of service.
I think it's act of service.
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
Act of service.
Yeah.
I think you want him to serve you.
Yeah.
So for you, he would be showing how much he loves you by doing for you what needs to be done, but still giving you the distance of doing your own thing. It's a very interesting space. And so he is ready to do it, but first wants to spend time. You want everything done. So can you imagine how big of a breakdown that is?
We need to take a break. We need to set you guys up for counseling with you. And my director is saying we need to talk about the love languages, just to maybe explain a little bit more about what that is. And when we come back, also get into tips. May sound a bit trivial, but just ways in which people can begin to transition into their various roles. Please use the hashtag MondaySpecialKE on Twitter, or text us on 22422. Leave your name and location, and let us know your thoughts as well. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Monday Special, where we're talking about how best to transition into the role of husband or wife in a marriage. And maybe, Pastor Faith and Patrick, if you can touch a little bit on love languages. Some questions coming in on what those are very briefly, as we also engage Anne and Dennis, because there are case studies today, the different types of love languages.
There's 5 different love languages, and it helps to know what yours is and what your partner's is, and how then they will receive love from you. So there's acts of service, which is where for you to receive love, you want to be served. So food brought to you, your clothes are washed and ironed. I mean, all that stuff that women really struggle with, and men somehow seem to always love. So there's acts of service. There's words of affirmation. Just, you've done a very good job, or thank you for making dinner. Those sort of things that men have a hard time saying and women really receive. Then there's gifts. Just the opportunity to show and express you love me by giving me gifts. I feel loved when I get a gift. So that's the 3rd love language. The fourth love language is physical touch, and it's not always ending up in sex. It's just that you hold my hand, you touch my back. Some people just feel expressed in love that way. And the 5th one is
quality time.
Quality time. I think what he's sharing over and over again, that his big love language is time. Just spend time with me first before we cook or before we do anything else.
Okay. Have you, sorry Daniel, I called you Daniel. Have you identified? I know we talked a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And we're still trying to understand Anne's love language. Before we even go to that, is it important to know someone's love language before you get married, before you get into a relationship? Does it help much, would you say?
I think it does. Because in their case, and probably also in our case, the lack of understanding the love language means I serve her in a way that I think she'll feel loved.
Yeah.
Yet for her, she doesn't feel loved. So we begin to have conflict, and there's that lack of communication. I'm wondering, why is she getting angry with me? And I'm doing everything I thought is loving. And in her case, she's wondering, what's wrong with this man? I'm doing all these things, I'm buying all these things for him, and
he doesn't seem moved.
He doesn't seem moved at all.
Moved by it.
Yeah.
How then can you best advise? And like we said, it's very personal, it's different from one couple to the next, but making that adjustment or transition into marriage, what would you want to say to couples who are at that stage of getting into a marriage, struggling with transitions? What are some of the tips, if I can use that word?
I think communication is paramount, like we've been saying. The constant conversations that, this man has, or woman, is an adult and has, lived so many years on their own, or has an independent life. So I need to get to know them. I mean, it can't happen in the 2 years of dating compared to the 20-something years that they've been alive, or 30 years. So it's a opportunity to have open conversation. Can we be vulnerable with one another? Because marriage is the one relationship where there's most vulnerability. And now, because I trust you, have said yes to you, I need to know that you have my back. So we can be open about the situations. I really don't like cooking, and your language of love is cooking. So how can we reach a compromise? What's the place of saying, perhaps we should take turns cooking, and that's okay, or perhaps we should hire somebody to be cooking for us, and that's okay. But open communication that allows us to get over the dilemmas of the crisis that this is what I expected, I'm not getting it, so what can we do to resolve and be in a different place? Because ultimately, there's still deep love for one another, and we want, like Anne said, this marriage to work. And so these things that begin to pile up, because they're tiny little things, but when they're not resolved and they're not addressed, they just pile up and begin to become a crisis. And we've heard people after 6 months are separating, and I'm like, how is that possible? Or after 3 months, it's just because there was no open vulnerability and communication.
From the get-go, even before marriage, even as they were courting. Yeah.
But like Daniel said, a lot of people sort of act it out before you get married. And then you you say I do, and this monster shows up after your honeymoon or during your honeymoon. So it's a very interesting place of saying, if I really want this to work, I will be open, vulnerable, and I will choose to trust that this man has the best interest in his heart for me.
Okay, and before Patrick comments, that's also perhaps a reason why premarital is something that people are really advocating for, you would say.
The counseling that happens. And like I said before, it's a lot of theory, but it's open. Again, it opens a place for communication. Let's talk about in-laws. How many times should we visit your house or your parents? How many times should your brother be over at our house and spend over at our house? Or finances, should we share a bank account or not? Who pays what bills? How many children? What if we can't have children? What should we adopt? There's just a lot of things that premarital counseling helps put on the table and sort of open that place for communication that's open and vulnerable and real.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Your thoughts on just being able to transition into those roles?
I think one of the things that really helped us was, one, the premarital. Then we had a mentor couple. The mentor couple was very open with us in the way they related with each other and the issues that they went through. So they really prepared us for marriage. One of the big issues that actually the mentor couple helped us through was finances. I previously did not think we should have joint accounts and all that stuff. So when they brought us together and told us, once you're married, everything you have is as a couple. And that really helped in a lot of the communication. So when we brought our money together, I now had to make decisions on money by consulting her. And that was a challenge initially, but that really helped. So that communication, and that happened before we got married, really helped in marriage, because now we were doing things together. It was hard initially, as Faith would then tell me, no, we can't do this, and I'm wondering how. I mean, previously I was able to do it without questioning me. How are you now telling me I can't buy this or we can't do that?
Yeah.
Yes, but that did help.
That did help.
Yes, that
All
did
right.
help.
And as we wind up, just your own thoughts on, there's other couples like you, young, newlyweds trying to transition into these roles, what would you want to say to them about taking that next step or being able to expect different things within a marriage? Daniel?
By taking this, I may say, one, in relationship, you are not sure the real person you are. But now, in marriage, you come and now experience the true person that you married. Now that comes in calls for adjustment. Are you be able to adjust so that you accommodate each other for marriage? And because you made the vows to each other, and out of that, you don't see mistakes, see the love that you have for the person. You'll be able now to conquer all the challenges that you have in life so that you can be able to achieve.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, Anne?
Mine would be for transition and adjusting, you need to accept. At the bottom of your heart, accept that now I've become a wife, I've become a husband. You had your group, you had your siblings. This is the way you are used to life, but you have to accept that now I am a wife or a husband. Then he just talked of being accommodative so that you will meet. With those differences, you'll still be able to come to a point, to a central point where both of you meet. Because as I said again, this marriage has to work. Yes. One
way or another.
Yeah.
Okay. There's so much more we could have talked about tonight, but that's the time we have. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts. And let's see what some of you had to say on Twitter as well before Hussein Mohammed joins me on set. Okay, Steve Mopao says marriage is a fundamental stage in life and it's essential to have long-term courtship before making a vow.
At F. Okango, marriage is like a garden. Takes time to grow, that is. But the harvest is rich for those... Okay, I didn't get to finish that.
You were reading too slowly. At Frankie Satoi says, the best marriage is built by dialogue, trust, and honesty. Okay. Let's see if we have another one.
At Badia Paul, the secret in marriage is openness. Don't keep secrets since it can result in a disaster and unnecessary doubts.
All right, and then at Kim Bissell says lack of respect and communication is what breaks most relationships. Oh, should I read that? Okay, I'm not sure what that handle is, but marriage roles are cut across mutual privileges and must be governed by trust, understanding, and responsibility. Do we have any text messages?
Yeah, we do. This is the most honest show you have done, Citizen. My shock when I got married is when he refuses to be ironing his clothes and I'm pushed to do it. I hate ironing. I'm 1 year old in marriage.
Yeah.
Jennifer Matiku in Kamulu, Nairobi, I think, or Kamulu. Problem in marriage is that the couple's expectations are based mainly on love and not realities of marital responsibilities. Jomo GG Westlands, marriage nowadays is like an enacted movie where couples are carried away to a make-believe lifestyle only found in movies. The big shock is the rude reality that marriage life is not a walk in the park. Just be original, don't be fake. And finally, Yahya from Nyeri. Mine was arranged marriage. I didn't know him at all. It was the best way because there was no pretense before marriage, and we're very happy.
Wow, interesting perspective. Yeah. How are you adjusting? Newlywed?
How is you adjusting?
How is Hussein adjusting?
You know, okay.
You're on the spot, just
I'm not on the spot. This is about Kenyans and it's not about us. So
You're Kenyan.
I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, okay?
It's okay,
The show is about Kenyans,
yes,
all right? So, yeah, it's never about us.
All the same, I'd like to thank Anne and Daniel, of course, Pastor Faith and Patrick. Thank you so much for your thoughts and for coming on set. Hussein, it's okay, I'll get you someday.
Although some say this is your show because you're going into it.
Okay, and that's where I wind up.
You're very young.
I'm still young, I don't know these things. Okay. I'm Janet Bogwa. Have a good night.
Good night, I'm Hussein Mohammed.
More than 50 years before our country began.